Kieran, everyone's here. Brilliant, thank you. Thank you. Okay, everything good? All good? Yes, let's do it. Let's go. Okay, good morning everyone, welcome. I hope you had a really good summer. What I want to talk to you today about is Lovecraft, philosophy, and well, that should actually be decentering humanity, but apparently autocorrect is a beautiful thing. So let's first talk about H.P. Lovecraft, the uninitiated, because I know not everyone knows who he is. So he was an author, poet that was born in 1890 in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island. He is the progenitor of what we now know as cosmic horror. I'm sure a lot of you have seen things that would have been based on things by H.P. Lovecraft. So if you've seen Alien, The Thing, a lot of that kind of stuff from outer space coming down and basically killing people. That's all cosmic horror. One thing that a lot of people, he didn't become popular until after he died. He basically died poor with bowel cancer, eating beans and spending all his money on paper to write his copious amounts of letters to people. He wasn't popular when he was alive, except for the very few people in his little circle of people. So some of the interesting things about Lovecraft was the fact that he was an atheist in a time where atheism wasn't really a thing. You know, he lived in a very puritanical part of the US, and he believed that there was no God. More than that, he believed that humans were not at the center of things. Now, for a lot of people, that kind of is a bit of a strange concept, because some of us believe in a God, a monotheistic God, a Christian God, that suggests that we are at the center of everything, we are made in God's image. Now, if that isn't the case, then where do we stand? Now, a lot of people will then go, well, science. But with a lot of scientists, they still believe that we are at the center of things, that humans are somehow, we are the most important because we have the intellect that other animals don't. You know, we can do things that other animals can't, and so somehow we are the alpha predator, the apex predator, whatever you want to call it. So, now, Lovecraft, his stories specifically, the God that was in them was not the all-loving God that you would see in Christianity or other monotheistic religions. There was no divine intervention. There was no success for the good and punishment for the evil. It was all, they don't care about us. There are gods, and they're big and tentacled, and they hate us, or they don't even think about us. When they do think about us, they don't like us. And they'll use us for whatever horrible, tentacly reason that they want to. Now, why this interests me is because Lovecraft didn't even come down on the scientific side either. We did, but not entirely. So, he had this idea that science could go too far, that eventually humans would find something out and it would backfire on them. Now, to me, he was a bit of a prophet in that sense, because about 15 years later, 10 to 15 years after he died, the nuclear bomb was invented. And if there's any evidence of a scientific invention that has bitten humanity on the ass, I think the nuclear bomb is quite high up there. So there is this kind of weird tension between the religious and the scientific in his work. And that poses a bit of a weird philosophical question, in my opinion, because he didn't come down on either of those sides. He kind of hits a grey area where he's created these gods and monsters, but he also uses science to explain them, but he also says that science will hurt us. So he puts a place where not a lot of people had gone then, and not a lot of people went until very recently, which is what I want to talk about today. Because there are some new style philosophers, like you can see here, new materialism, post-humanism, speculative realism, object-oriented ontology, that decenter humans from the universe in some way. And so I'm going to talk a little bit, give a brief overview of each of these things, or three of them at least, and then after, I'm going to talk about some of the research I've done over some with somebody quite cool and famous who I will try and explain to you in a bit, but we had a lot of discussions. So, first, speculative realism. That should not be there. Why is it there? That's fine. Okay, so, as you can see by the quote there, it is clear that anything cannot have been independently of phenomenology. Carbon dating can prove beyond doubt that there has been a time in which humans, and therefore human observers, did not exist. So, the analogy I would give, as you can see there, well that shouldn't be there because I was supposed to delete it, is the one of the toaster. So, in 2 million years, 3 million years, 4 million years, humans have gone. We no longer exist for whatever reason, nuclear warfare, ozone layer crumbling to dust, or any other number of reasons why we're not here anymore. And an alien race comes down to Earth, and it's looking around the wreckage, and it finds a toaster. But is it a toaster? Will they see it as a toaster? It is only our ability to see it and observe it and feel it, and we see it as it is, that makes it a toaster. Anybody else, anything else coming down would think, oh, well, it could be anything. So that's kind of a very, very simplistic idea of what speculative realism might suggest. So we have our own ways of looking at things, but there is outside influence. And it's not just us. Objects have a quality outside of human observation, whether we like it or not. And that goes against a lot of kind of Kantian philosophy that suggests that we think, therefore we are. So the only reason something exists is if we observe it. So speculative realism in about a minute. We'll go to object-oriented ontology in about a minute. I'll give another kind of quick example of how I think this kind of works. So if you think about a cubist painting of, say, a dog or a postman or a mountain. In Cubism, they take all the constituent parts that make up those things and they pick it apart and put it into its little parts and different things onto a canvas. And an object-oriented ontologist would look at these fissions between the qualities of the object and its appearance, or what it looks like, or the senses of it, so what we can touch or feel or smell. And so actually, outside of those things, just like before, there is something outside of it that we cannot sense, we cannot look at, we cannot smell, we cannot feel it. And so forth. Therefore, we can't know it. We can't know it properly, we will never be able to know it properly because we can't notice that quality that we can't fathom. And finally, post-humanism. A lot of this stuff kind of fits together. You'll see that a lot of these terms will come together in papers and stuff, but post-humanism is slightly different only because it goes with the actual humanity. It focuses a little bit more on humanity, but where we're going. So, in the near future, post-humanist or some post-humanists would say, humanity is going to go somewhere else, apart from what we are physically now. So, implants, cybernetics, biomechanical stuff. Stuff that will make us unrecognisable from what we are now. Okay? So, Lovecraft, all of this stuff, posthumanism, object-oriented ontology, and the rest. Let's write that. Doesn't want to go backwards. That's fine. In all of his books, all his writing, there is a certain part of all of this stuff. So, for instance, at the Mountains of Madness, he talks about this city that's long gone, that predates humanity, a race that predates humanity, that made us by mistake. Humans were just an afterthought. They threw themselves into the water, and a few million years later, out we come. That's humanity. Not made by God, not made in his perfect image, just a mistake. In the Call of Cthulhu, he talks about the city of R'lyeh under the water, where the city is almost like a cubist painting in itself. There is no rhyme or reason to the way things are built. It is all bits and pieces, geometry that doesn't make sense. And in Colette, a story about a man who cheats death by the miracle of air conditioning. He cools himself down so he doesn't die. But when that breaks, 30 years after he's supposed to have died, he melts into something that is far less than human. So now, I'm going to go into the research I did over the summer with a guy called that's a blank page. There's the next one. That's also a blank page. Okay. Now, why are there blank pages? I sent you the right PowerPoint, right? It had all the writing on it.
But it's on your laptop. Do you want me to come?
Can you come down?
Yeah.
Sorry. Ooh, that's, So, yeah, so all of it's here up until, and then it just isn't being.
Well, it's not. It's here. Let's make it anything I'm still in the house.
Sorry about this, guys. There's no slide. Okay. All right, fine. Just, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. Yeah, I'll just close it. Just. Thanks.
Can you do with that?
Yeah, I'll be fine. Alright, got. Oh shit. That's all good. Let's be honest, the PowerPoint wasn't very good anyway, was it? Spelling mistakes. The things that weren't supposed to be there wasn't referenced properly. And to tell the truth, like I did that in like a week because I wasn't even thinking about this performance until a week ago. Because of what happened over the summer, which I was going to hear about, and now, okay, fine. No, okay, that's fine. be truthful with you, because I'm going to get a bad mark anyway, so I might as well. So it all started with an email. In fact, it actually started with a junk email. And you know junk emails because, you know when you go into emails and you think, oh, I'll just check my junk just in case something has slipped through. Yeah? I mean, nothing ever had, so it's local girls looking for sex or a Nigerian prince trying to miraculously give you his money. So I looked at my emails and there is this email hidden in between all of those things saying, Lovecraft research. So obviously I'm interest is piqued because I've sent a load of emails to different Lovecraft scholars all over the world asking for help with things because I've been doing Lovecraft a week. So I assumed there must be one of these people getting back to me. And it was. And I can actually show you, I'll show you or read you the email that this guy sent me because I still have it on here. I should do at least. Yes. There it is. Got it. So it said, Dear Mr. McGarry, I'm writing to you because I've seen your videos. For reference, I did videos on YouTube during the year. You must have seen them because you marked them. And know that you are researching H.P. Lovecraft. My name is Elias Vermausen, and I am a literary scholar from Copenhagen, Denmark. Your viewpoint on Lovecraft's work is fascinating and something that I believe needs to be looked into more, and I think I can help you. I understand this is out of the blue, and I will also understand if you do not wish to reply, but if you would like to talk, then please email me, and we can set out a time to talk maybe on Zoom or via Google Meets. Yours sincerely, Dr. Elias Vermausen, University of Copenhagen. Seems reasonable enough, you know? But it did go into my junk, so I looked him up. University of Copenhagen. So there is Elias Vermausen, Doctor of Anthropology, Philosophy, and Weird Fiction, which obviously, well, seems reasonable. So I email him back, and I say, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. And we email a few times saying, you know, when can we meet? And eventually, we decided to meet on August 1st, which incidentally is my birthday, but normally I would do something on my birthday, but I'm boring, so I spent my day talking to this guy. Turns out, he is a Lovecraft nut. And I mean, I think of myself as a Lovecraft nut, but this guy is way beyond. Like, he's been to Brown University, where they keep all of the Lovecraft manuscripts and letters and stuff that he wrote, and he's been there multiple times, going through and through and through. And what's most interesting is he seemed to go on the basis, when he was writing all his papers, which I looked up, that Lovecraft stuff was real. Now, first thing, I asked him about it, and he said, look, it's not, I don't actually think it's real. I just do it because I think if you're looking at something like Lovecraft, then you need to inhabit it somehow. You need to immerse yourself in it to you know, get the most out of it. Two, looking it up, there's a lot more people that think that the Cthulhu stuff is real than you'd probably imagine. Now that's one of two things. That's either shining light on how good Lovecraft's work was, or it's a bit of a damning indictment on how easily humans want to believe in something greater than themselves. I don't, each one maybe a little bit of like, I don't know. You know, I asked him about it, and he said, look, I've got a project for you, or a project that I want to do that I think you'd be interested in, and that will prove my point. His words, prove my point. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I've got this performance coming up, so I probably shouldn't, but I'm kind of flattered, you know. This guy's much more intellectually above me, you know. So I thought, why not, you know? Well, why not do it? I can still do my performance while it's going on. So he said, okay, great. And he told me about the project, so I'll tell you about the project so you know. The project was, he had found a book in like a little bookshop somewhere out the way in Providence, where Lovecraft was, for want of that he said made it seem like some of the things that Lovecraft was talking about were true. And I said, yeah, well, a lot of people say that. He said, well, it was in a weird language first, and I've been translating it, and the language was not one or the other. It was somewhere between, what did you say, Sumerian and Sanskrit. Who knows? I don't know languages. But he said he'd spent the last couple of years translating this book, and now he's translated it. He wanted someone to perform some of the passages from it. Seems reasonable. But I said, you're not, you're not just kind of kidding around with me here. You did actually find this book. You're not just immersing yourself. And he said, I'll prove it to you. A few days later, through my front door comes a brown package with 2 books in it. One book with the original weird language that I can understand, and one book with all the translations. So I started recording them. I bought a new microphone for £200, which is a lot of money for a microphone, because my microphone was rubbish and I didn't want to seem unprofessional. And I started recording these things, and something struck me about them. They were very un-Lovecraftian. There were none of the flourishes that you get with Lovecraftian stuff, like all the language, the purple language that you get. And instead, they were almost like, they were cold, like emotionless. Okay, it's better that I actually just show you, because I've got one here, I think. Yes. In fact, here's an idea. Instead of me reading them, because I've read them enough times, can I have a volunteer? Anybody willing? Put your hands up. Go on then. Okay. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay. All I want you to do, very simple, 4 lines here, just read them out for me.
Okay.
Don't worry if you can't say that word.
No, it's okay. I know what I do. Okay. Cthulhu will live. Earth will come under him. To the arrogant, he will give a choice. One will be reasonable. Responsible. Sorry, that was
Can you read it again?
I can 100% read it again. I'll read it again correctly. Cthulhu will live. Earth will come under him. To the arrogant, he will give a choice. One will be responsible. You'd like me to perform it again? Okay. Cthulhu will live. Earth will come under him. To the arrogant, he will give a choice. One will be responsible.
Do you see what I mean? It's not, yeah, he dramatised it a bit, but there's no real thing there. And I thought to myself, well, realistically, if this guy, Vermousen, had written it, then, well, he would have written it like Lovecraft would have written it. There would have been more to it. So I thought, maybe actually this thing might be real. Anyway, so I started recording these things. This was one of the first ones I did, actually. That night, I started having these dreams. And at first, I didn't even really remember them. They were like snapshots, if you see like photos and it's just one after the other. And there was like 2 passageways and a shadow and a green light. And then I woke up sweating profusely. And I couldn't get to sleep. Now, I'm a student, so I have learned to live on not much sleep. So next day I carry on and do more of these recordings, completely forgetting that this performance is coming up in about 2-3 weeks at this point. And I start to really kind of get into them, and I find myself getting, time starts to dilate a bit. Now I start, and then I finish, and then it's 9 o'clock at night and I have to go to bed. But I can't sleep because of these dreams, because they're getting worse. And there's more, I can see more detail, and the shadow is getting larger and larger. Suddenly, 2 weeks have passed, and I've been spending all my time doing little couplets, and I don't have anything for this. So, I think, okay, right, I'll email Mousen because he will know what to do, he will be able to help me. So I email him, and you know when you send an email, and you get an email straight back saying postmaster error because the email doesn't exist anymore? Well, that's what happens. And I think to myself, okay, well, he's at a university, maybe the email has changed, he's got a different one. So I go onto the University of Copenhagen website, and I look for his thing, and it's gone. It doesn't exist. I look at other universities that do stuff, and I look at Brown and different things, and he's not there. So eventually I call Copenhagen University. I say, hello, my name's Jeremy Gary, is there an Elias from Mousen here? And they say, no, never heard of him. There's never been anyone like that that works here. Now I'm freaking out. But I remember he wrote papers, peer-reviewed papers, with other Lovecraft scholars like S.T. Joshi and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, they must exist. So I go back and try and find them. And they're gone. Disappeared. So I contact S.T. Joshi because, you know, I've talked to him before. And I say to him, do you know this guy, Elias Mousen? And he said no. And then he says this. Don't you realise that Elias Mousen sounds a lot like Erlus Vermius? Now, to the uninitiated, that will mean nothing, but Elias Vermius in Lovecraft stories was the weird priest guy, Latin guy, that translated the Necronomicon into Latin. So here I am, with nothing, because I've got a week to write something, so I tried to cobble together something from the research that me and Vermousen had done. I'm sorry. I'm just tired. I can't sleep, because all I see is the same thing every time. And the shadow is getting closer, and I can feel it even when I'm awake. I'm sorry. I wish I could have done more.